Hey y'all, welcome back to Sales for Everybody. This is Tiff, your head expert, and today we have session number two. Session number two is really going to focus on how do you even know if tech sales is right for you, and this is likely going to turn into multiple episodes kind of scattered about in the curriculum because there's like so many things you could ask yourself before you get into tech sales, but hoping that this is like a quick intro into where you could actually start. So, as a reminder, this was started because I really wanted to demystify the path to getting to tech sales, especially because of how lucrative and impactful these careers can be. And I think there's been a lot of, call it like, I don't know, urban myths about what sales really is. And some of it's true. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, most sales folks aren't gun ho about making money, are really focused on getting to know people, and are really heavy talkers. Like, I would be lying if I didn't say that those things were true. But I think for a lot of folks like myself who tend to be, at least I like to think, and most people who know me would say this, I'm a pretty authentic person. There's a lot of us in sales too, who we are here to help people solve pains with really cool software, right? And so, just as a refresher before we jump into the content, look, we have three main things we want to do here: educate you, empower you, and encourage you, period, point blank. If you don't feel like that's happening, please let me know in the comments and I'll continue to improve as we go on. All right, so let's dive in. So, from the last session, if you haven't checked out session one, you can definitely go back and check it out. If not, it's all good. These are designed to be semi connected so that way you can jump in and kind of know what you're looking at, but also it would be good if you saw the session before if you have time. And from the last session, I was recommending that you take some time to really search out industries of interest, especially in tech. Like, you'll hear a lot of people say there's so many categories. Like, one good website to look up is like CB, C as in cat, B as in boy insights, or Gartner or Forrester, and they will break down a lot of the different types of industries that exist within technology. So you could have hardware, you could have software, you could have fintech, you could have healthcare, you could have enterprise software, you could have Internet of Things. There's just so many different places and spaces that you can play in with tech sales that you want to at least know at the, let's call it 60,000 foot view, what type of sales or what type of software is available to you. And then I also recommended that you come up with some questions, right? So, thinking through, who do you want to be? Where do you think you want to go after doing that research? And this, again, is going to be a very iterative process because you're not going to have all the questions after this first run. So you'll see at the end of this that the homework assignment is going to be the same thing, right? Keep coming up with questions, keep coming up with things that you're curious about. Okay. So for today's agenda, this one we'll keep it really brief, less than 10 minutes in total time. Going to do a real quick example of a self reflection exercise. So, giving you some content to react to personally, like while you have some downtime, thinking through how you could, if you have a LinkedIn already, how you could leverage your existing LinkedIn network to get some progress on finding folks to talk to. And then again, like I mentioned, some homework, right? And I hate the word homework, but I don't know what else to call it. For right now, it's homework. All right. So, as a quick refresher, right? Last time we talked a little bit about what an account executive is and what a solutions consultant is, right? And so, for those who didn't see session one, high level, these are the two main types of roles you're usually going to come across in tech sales. Underneath each of these, now you're going to see that I've added the different types of roles that people sometimes, not all the time, because I didn't come from any. Well, actually, I kind of came from one of these. A lot of the times, these are the roles that people were in before they got into the account executive or solutions consultant position. So again, I'm mid-career, right? So I'm going to be different than someone who's just getting out of college, or even someone who's a few years out of college. Like, I have a master's, I've been in the game for a little while. So I came into my solutions consultant role as a technical person coming from a management consulting background. You'll see management consulting is second from the bottom here on the right. And then you'll see for some of the account executives that I know, I've never been one, but for the folks that I know that were AEs, as they call them in the industry, they were either like a business analyst, they were sometimes a management consultant, sometimes they were a sales development representative who worked their way up the ranks, which took like 5, 6, 7 years, like I mentioned in session one. And so there's a lot of different ways to become these positions. These are not exhaustive, right, in terms of titles, but wanted to give you at least a landing page or landing ground for how you should start to think about the types of folks that typically are in these roles. But the beauty of this, and this is the reason why I'm doing this, is that you don't necessarily have to come from this background in order to get into these positions. Like, I've worked in some very random places before I got into tech sales, and I've done a lot of different things and I've sold a lot of different things, including like, I had my own startup at one point, right? And so there's a lot of people who think about these things and think that, man, there's only one size fits all. Not the case at all. And you'll see that once you start to explore LinkedIn. Cool. So now let's do a little bit more self exploration to get you some clarity as far as who you are and kind of what you even want. Honestly, like this is really, I think, where a lot of people mess up making a career switch or even thinking about their next position. They don't really think through who they are today, or if they do, they don't really take the time to stew and like marinate on like, is this actually going to be the type of position I want to do? I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know. So I would encourage you to take a look in the mirror and ask yourself these big four questions. Not exhaustive by any means, but meant to really drum up the conversation. And I would hope that you take these questions to your peers and people you care about or people who care about you, and you ask them these things too. This first question here, they're all really straightforward. What are you really good at? Like really, really good at. You may be good at baking cookies. I don't know. Just write it down. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just write it down. What right now what you want to get better at. So are there any things that you've learned about yourself? You're like, man, like I really suck at sewing. Or I really suck at like crafting emails. Like there, whatever it is, like you just need to know those things so you at least, again, remember, empowered. You feel empowered and you know yourself well enough to be able to have a really candid conversation if someone were to ask you this question. Number three, what would people say that you're actually good at? So thinking of coworkers and friends, right? Former coworkers included, people you volunteered with, people you do ad hoc things with, anyone who's bumped up against you in some capacity, including people you've had friction with. I would argue that the people you've had friction with are probably the best people to get that feedback from. Ask them and write it down. Again, you can use a Word document, use an Excel, use a notebook. I don't care what you use. Your medium is your medium, but I would prefer that you write this down so that you have it, because this is almost like your own personal strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats analysis for yourself, right? So SWOT, if you're not familiar. And then what would people say you need to get better at? So again, constructive. I'm always about constructive feedback. What are you not good at? How have you failed in the past? How have you recovered? When was a moment that you really had to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I messed this up, and you were able to recover and get better at something? Well, what are those things, right? And so ask people these questions. Like 360 feedback is something that when I was getting my master's, they jumped up and down about, and I didn't really see the value of it until I got older, because I realized it's really important to have a holistic point of view on where you are not doing great and where you are struggling from someone else's vantage point. Okay. So from there now, you have these main questions you've asked yourself, right? And you've done this reflection at the top. You've asked yourself these questions and you're looking you in this mirror at who you are. Now, this other caricature you see in the middle of the screen, I know if you don't know if you remember, but in the first session, I talked a little bit about like finding someone or even identifying people who are in the position that you would want to be in. Now, when you think about this, it shouldn't be super complicated. You can use LinkedIn, you can Google search people in these positions and just find them. And what you want to do is start to think about these questions that you've been accumulating. Like, what are those hit lists of questions? I've given you some here as an example, but imagine that you were sitting in front of this person. Let's call her Barbara, right? Barbara's in front of you. Barbara is an amazing person. She's super nice. She's giving you 30 minutes of her time on a phone call, on a Google Meet, on a FaceTime, or on an in person coffee chat, even better. What are you going to talk about? What are you going to ask her? And for people in sales, for some people, this comes really organically. Like for me, I could do this in my sleep. I could reach out to 100 people tomorrow, have 20 coffee chats next week, and it's like nothing, because I've built up that muscle. But if you've never done this before, you really have to start practicing the skill, because this is literally the linchpin of what sales is about. It's about getting in front of people, asking them questions, getting to know them with the intent of truly building that relationship and creating a connection with that person. And you have to start somewhere, right? So the goal though is that with this self-reflection exercise, you should continue doing this throughout your entire process. You continue to talk to more people. Like as you continue to talk to more people, you should start to learn things about yourself, right? Like, oh, I really don't like when I have to talk to someone last minute, or I really enjoy talking to people who have this in common with me. All of these things, and you'll start to pick up on the trends. You'll start to understand yourself a little bit more, and in this, you'll become an even better candidate for a potential role in sales, especially tech sales. Okay. Let's talk about where you start though for finding people that you should talk to. Anyone. Like I think LinkedIn is great, but then you'll see here I've kind of, you are in the middle of this. Think about your friends and your friends of your friends, right? So when I first started thinking about this position in tech sales, I was just applying to roles and just reaching out to people cold turkey, saying, "Hey, like I would love an opportunity to talk to you. Here's my background. Here's a little bit about me. Here's my resume." And at the time, I had a website, right? And that website I sent with my little intro blurb, which I'll give you an example of here on the next slide or the next two slides. But you need to just go out to these folks. I would start with the coworkers, the right side of this, like the friends of friends, your teachers, right? If you have a degree or even high school teachers, folks that just know people and your coworkers. Start there and just see where you get. And again, this is just to see who knows who because you'll be surprised. Like you might have worked with someone at like a summer job whose older sibling is like a director of sales at an organization. Who knows? You just have to put yourself out there. And so, my recommendation, big number, is send out 50 messages the next 2 weeks to people in a role you think you may be interested in tech sales. Again, I've given you some of the titles of people you want to target: sales development representative, account executive, solutions consultant, etc. If you don't know what side of the fence you want to land on, that's fine. Know that these are busy people, though, so you have to make this outreach very impactful and meaningful for them. And so what I've done is, I would highly recommend you use ChatGPT here. I've created some draft templates here. You can screenshot this, you can take it, and you can just use it in your outreach. But you want to make sure that you're giving this person something about you that's not just, "Hi, I want some of your time." Please don't do that. We will block you. Like, please, like, we get people reaching out to us all the time. You want to make it of substance. So sharing a story, sharing an anecdote. Maybe you've looked at that person's page previously and they posted a really good article or they've shared really good content. Maybe you've seen something about them on the internet. Maybe you've noticed their company is performing really, really well on their some recent stock earnings report. Go and find something about them to start the conversation. Do not just ask people for their time. I think that's the biggest mistake I see from a lot of younger folks today is they just want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to you. I don't like. I don't want to talk to you. I'd like just to talk to you. No, I don't want to do that. Like, I love people, but I'm busy, and so please like reach out with some purpose and some focus, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of responses. So with that as a reminder of your session, you're going to keep doing the same thing from last week in the last session. Like this is going to be a buildup, right? Like we need to get the muscles going, get you thinking about the things that are right for you in terms of questions and get yourself out there. All right, cool. So thank you y'all. As always in the comment section, talk about what brings you here, what you've learned, what you've seen, like, subscribe, and save. And I definitely will see you at the next session of Sales for Everybody. Appreciate y'all.